Well, today in the state of South Australia, it becomes illegal for any political party or any member of parliament or a candidate to receive any donation for the purposes of their election or re-election.
Sounds good, right? Until you read the bill and think about the second and third order effects. Peter Malinauskas, the Premier of South Australia, has just banned your right to give money as you see fit. Political parties will no longer be able to receive donations. And that might sound good on the surface, but now all campaign funding will come from your tax dollars. So whether you like it or not, you're paying for the advertising of political parties that you oppose. Remember, spending your money as you see fit is an act of free speech. This was recognised by the US Supreme Court in Buckley v. Valeo 1976 and Citizens United 2010. It's a principle that protects your right to support candidates or causes that you believe in.
The inspiration for this came from a trip that you actually did to the US in 2014.
What I witnessed in 2014 in the US midterms, and of course it's only got worse since then, is that the best campaign managers insist that their candidates or members of Congress spend no less than 80% of their time fundraising.
Peter Malinauskas doesn't realise that campaigning for donations isn't a bug of the Western political system. It's a feature. The Founding Fathers of America literally baked it into the Constitution, intentionally. They understood that idle politicians would look for ways to exercise their power, so they gave them something to do: campaign. I don't want my politicians to spend their time writing more laws. I want them to spend time convincing me to give them my vote and my dollar. If they can't convince me using their rhetoric, then they don't get to force me with threats of imprisonment. And just so that you understand more than the South Australian Premier about how and why the US Founding Fathers baked in these campaigning incentives into their system, members of the House of Representatives serve a 2-year term. The idea is to make them more responsive to the will of the people. Since their terms are short, they have to regularly seek re-election, making them more accountable to their constituents. Senators are elected for 6-year terms, with their elections staggered so that only 1/3 of them are up for re-election once every 2 years. The Founding Fathers designed this to create stability and insulation from the immediate political pressures, allowing senators to make more longer-term decisions. This was seen as important for the Senate to have a more deliberate, less reactive role in government. Finally, the President is elected for 4 years with the possibility of re-election for an additional term. This term length was intended to strike a balance between providing enough time for the President to implement policies and ensuring they remain accountable to the people through regular elections. What Malinauskas doesn't appreciate is that the varying term lengths and campaign process were intentionally designed so that the interests of each chamber would conflict at certain points. This encourages thorough debate, prevents hasty decisions, and reflects the competing interests of different time horizons. The House, with its shorter terms, reflects the immediate concerns of the people, while the Senate, with its longer terms, provides broader, longer-term perspective.
You want to arrest a decline in engagement in politics.
So his solution to political disengagement is to make it so he no longer has to engage with us to get our money. How's that going to improve engagement? If anything, this means that if you've got criticisms, he doesn't have to listen to them, because he'll get your money regardless. It's a sneaky power grab to entrench the incumbents so that the minor parties and independents, who have been steadily chipping away at the major parties' dominance, can never truly compete. Under this law, funding is based on the number of votes you get in the election. Each vote is worth $5.50. Oh wait, unless you're an incumbent, then each vote is worth $8.50, further entrenching the dominant parties. Labor got 436,134 votes in 2022. That's worth roughly $2.4 million. Now you might think they will only get $500,000 because that's the spending cap that the media has been talking about, but that's not true. I read the bill, I put it through ChatGPT and Grok, and I even emailed and then called the South Australian Electoral Commission, which I must say was very helpful and forthcoming with information. Shout out to Dan and Michelle. But the thing that everybody is getting confused about is the difference between funding and spending. Funding, you can get as much as you want. Spending is capped. What's it capped at? A lot lower than what funding is going to equal. The spending cap is $75,000 per district. Multiply that by the 47 districts that the major parties will run candidates in, and that's $3.525 million as your spending cap, far exceeding the $2.4 million of public funding that they will receive. Plus, if they run candidates in the Legislative Council, and they definitely will, then that's another $500,000 cap on top, which means their total spending cap in South Australia is $4.025 million. Meanwhile, they're waving around these caps like they're reining in big spending. Like, no, your spending cap is going to be far, far in excess of what you're going to get. And what you're getting is $2.4 million as a minimum, which is a huge amount of public money. If you still think this is about getting money out of politics, think again. Third-party organisations could spend money advertising on behalf of a major party because it's not a donation. They are capped at $450,000, but watch how many new organisations spring up spending exactly $450,000. You know what's funny? In the US, where Peter went, they passed a law putting caps on party advertising spending, just like what he's doing now. And what happened? To get around the law, super PACs were created. These are third-party, unaffiliated activist groups that advertise for the red and blue teams. And guess what? We already have something like that here called the Climate 200, which sponsors the Teal Independents, or Advance Australia, which attacks the Greens. That's how they'll get around these laws. Multiple political action committees that are unaffiliated with the majors will just happen to run ads on their behalf every election, just like in America. For a guy boasting about his trip to America, he certainly didn't learn much. To make it all seem fair, they've allowed newly registered political parties to accept $5,000 in donations. Do you know what $5,000 will get you? About 417 core flutes. Meanwhile, Labor can buy 199,894 core flutes with their $2.4 million taxpayer-funded budget. That's not even 1%. Labor can spend 480 times what an upstart can spend. The system is broken, and politicians are breaking it further. If you want to vote for a party that opposes this law coming to a state near you, consider voting for one of these parties who are opposed to taxpayer-funded political campaigns. If you think this is a good idea with no possible unintended consequences, then vote for one of these parties who support taxpayer-funded political advertising. You were born free.